Okay, class, we're starting section 6.2, factoring trinomials whose leading coefficient is 1. Objective 1, factor trinomials of the form x squared plus bx plus c. Now we want to multiply. We're going to multiply this binomial times this binomial. And we would take x times x times 3, 4 times x, and 4 times 3. So this will give us x squared plus 3x plus 4x plus 12. And then we combine like terms, 3x and 4x is 7x. So it'll be x squared plus 7x plus 12. It says in the product of x plus 4 times x plus 3, the coefficient of x is the sum of the last two terms. Now if we look at these last two terms, we have 4 and we have 3. 4 plus 3 is 7, which is the coefficient of x. And the constant term is the product of the last two terms. So we take 4 and 3. 4 times 3 is positive 12. Now, it says factoring x squared plus bx plus c. Now, to factor x squared plus bx plus c, look for two integers p and q whose product is c and whose sum is b. That is, p times q is c and p plus q is b. If such integers exist, the factor polynomial is going to be x plus p times x plus q. Now, we're going to apply this to the upcoming problems here. Example 2, we want to factor. Now, one thing I want to do, I want to teach you all a method that will work in every situation if a trinomial is factorable. So first, what I want to do is write this trinomial in standard form. So the standard form would be ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, a is the coefficient of your x squared, b is the coefficient of x, and c is your constant. So what we're going to do is list what our a, b, and c is equal to. Now, according to this expression here, our coefficient of x squared is 1. Our coefficient of b is 11, and our constant is 28. Now again, first we look at our standard form. We list our a, b, and c. And then now, after we list our a, b, and c, we multiply a times c. A is 1, and c is 28. And we can put that in parentheses. 1 times 28 is 28. Now what we do after we find 28, we want to write out all the factors of 28, but we will write them in factors of 2, which meaning we have 1 times 28, those are two factors of 28. Then 2 times 14, those are two factors of 28. And then finally 4 times 7. These are all the factors of 28. Now what we have to do is this here. Since all of your numbers are positive here, we're going to add these factors together. 1 and 28 is 29. 2 and 14 is 16. And 4 and 7 is 11. Okay, when we add these factors together, they must equal what b is. Okay, the only one that equals what b is the 4 and 7. So this is what we would do. We will go back to the original equation. We'll write x squared. This 4 and this 7 will replace the 11x. So it's positive 4, and we'll put the variable with the 4. And then it's positive 7, and we'll put the variable with the 7, plus 28. Now, if you look at this problem here, we have not changed this problem here because we know 4x and 7x is 11x. So it's still x squared plus 11x plus 28. So now we go about finishing this problem off. So now that we have this, we have 4 terms. And back in section 6.1, we did factor by grouping. So now we're going to do factoring by grouping. We group the first two terms here, x squared and 4x, and their greatest common factor is just x. Now what goes inside this parenthesis is x plus 4, because we know we would take x squared divided by x, that gives us x, and 4x divided by x gives us positive 4. Now we go here to 7x and 28. We can factor out a positive 7, And in parentheses, we will have x plus 4. Now, this is what happens. In order to know that you factored correctly, these two parentheses must be the same. If these two parentheses are not the same, then one or two things happen. Either you factored incorrectly or it cannot be factored. Now that we've done this, now we need to finish this problem off. In one of the parentheses, we could write everything that's outside of these two parentheses, which is x and the plus 7. And then in your other parenthesis, you will write one of the two repeating parentheses, and it's x plus 4. And that is your final answer. Now, we do need to check this answer. We could check this answer here because I ran out of space. We can multiply it. X times x plus x times 4 plus 7 times x plus 7 times 4. Now this will give us x squared plus 4x plus 7x plus 28. Now we know that we can add these two middle terms because they're like terms, and we would be left with x squared plus 11x plus 28. Now this is what, when we multiply these together, this is what it produces. Now let's go back to the original problem. And that is what we got, x squared plus 11x plus 28. So that means, as you all can see again, x squared plus 11x plus 28. That means that this truly is our final answer. Now this is your final answer. This is just you checking it. So this would be the answer you would write on the test when it asks you to factor. Now we go back up here. We did A. Now we're going to do B. Okay, now with B, this is already set up in the proper order. Now we have to do our A, B, and C. A is 1, B is -5, and C is -24. So now we have to multiply A times C. So that would be 1 times -24, which is -24. So now what we need to do is find the factors of -24. Now, for most people, you have not been taught to find the factors of a negative number. So what I want to do here is this here. I'm going to have you all find the factors of positive 24 first, and then we can worry about the negative sign after that. So we will have 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. Now, in order to get a negative number when you multiply, you know, one of the numbers, it doesn't matter if it's the larger or the smaller, one of the numbers have to be negative multiplied by the positive number. So we have to determine which one of these numbers is going to be negative and which one of these numbers is going to be positive. And this is how you could do it. If C is negative, well actually, if multiplying A and C gives you a negative number and your B is negative, that means that the larger number will be negative. So that's the larger number of all of these factors. Now we multiply. Actually we add them together like we did in the previous problem. 1 plus -24 is a -23. 2 plus -12 is a -10. 3 plus a -8 is -5. And 4 plus a -6 will give you -2. Now the two numbers that work is the 3 and the -8 because that's what equals B. So we have x squared plus 3x minus 8x minus 24. Now we group the first two terms, x squared and 3x has x in common, and you're left with x plus 3. Now we look here. I wanted to explain this here, our second two terms. Whenever you're dealing with two terms that you're factoring, or terms that you're factoring, if the lead term is negative, it doesn't matter about this negative sign here. But if the lead term is negative, whatever you factor out must be negative. So the greatest common factor of negative 8x and a minus 24 is a minus 8. And we'll be left with x plus 3. Now, our two parentheses match up. So we know we'll write this out as x minus 8 in one parenthesis and x plus 3 in the second parenthesis. And we're done. Now, if you want to check it, that's fine, but you don't have to. Now we can go here to example 3. We can use the same method. A is 1, B is 7, and C is 12. Now we multiply A times C, which would be 1 times 12, which is 12. Now we take the factors of 12, which is 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. And since everything is positive, we add them up. We add 13, we have 8, and we have 7. Now we know that we're trying to match up what B is equal to, so we use 3 and 4. So we add x squared plus 7x plus 12. But we'll put in 3x plus 4x plus 12. We group the first two terms here. We can factor out an x, and we'll be left with x plus 3. We take the second two terms here, and we can factor out a positive 4. And we'll be left with x plus 3. Now, these two parentheses match up. So one parenthesis will have everything on the outside. The other parenthesis will have one of the two repeaters. And that is your final answer. Now, one other thing that I have to say is this here. If you wrote the x plus 3 first and the x plus 4 second, that still means the same thing. Okay, now, scroll down here to example 4. We have our A, which is 1, our B, which is negative 9, and our C, which is 20. Okay, now we multiply our A and C, which would be 1 times 20, which is 20. So we take the factors of 20, 1 and 20, 2 and 10, and 4 and 5. Now this 4, you know this is a 4, it just has that little line that we sometimes get when I write a 4. Now, if you notice, C is positive, but B is negative. Now, remember, there's only two ways you could get a positive answer when you're multiplying two factors. And that's if both of them are positive or both of them are negative. Whenever your A and C gives you a positive number and your B is negative, that means that both of those factors must be negative. So now we add them. Negative 1 plus negative 20 is negative 21. Negative 2 and 10 is negative 12. And negative 4 and negative 5 is negative 9. So we go through and substitute. We add x squared minus 4x minus 5x plus 20. Now I have to change this because that looks too much like a 9. So now, let's see, hopefully I could get this to look more like a 4. Okay, now we group the first two. We can factor out an x, and we'll be left with x minus 4. We group the second two. Again, this first value and the second two is negative, so we have to factor out a negative. It has negative 5 in common, and we add x minus 4. So one parenthesis, we'll have x minus 5. In the other parenthesis, we'll have x minus 4. And that is our final answer. Now we scroll down here to examples 5 and 6. So we list our A, B, and C. A is 1, B is negative 6, and C is negative 16. So we do our A times C, which is 1 times negative 16, which is negative 16. So we find the factorization of positive 16. So it'd be 1 and 16, 2 and 8, and 4 and 4. Now whenever you multiply A and C and it gives you a negative, and your B is also negative, that means that your larger number is negative. So now we add these numbers here, and that gives you negative 15, -6, and also 0. You know we're looking for -6. So